I'm Mark Dawson from the Self-Publishing Show, and this is Self-Publishing Spotlight, where we shine a light on the indie authors who are changing the world of publishing, one book at a time.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Spotlight. We meet indie authors at all stages of their careers and ask them a series of 5 questions. 5 questions about their process, their mistakes and their successes. 5 answers that will help you level up your own author career. My name's Tom Ashford and I'm part of the Self-Publishing Formula. Don't forget that you can get your self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. This week's guest is Elizabeth Ann West. She's written 27 books in the historical Regency romance genre and she lives in Texas. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everybody.
So would you like to start by going into detail with the historical Regency romance? Because I know there's a sort of subgenre that you write in specifically.
Yes, I am well known on different forums and things as the Jane Austen girl. So I write derivatives of Pride and Prejudice, and they sell like hotcakes. Nice. And
what does that involve as such?
So, I tell a lot of people just about everything is derivative. When we're all at our cocktail parties at conferences and stuff, we talk about how there's 8 universal plots, how many times they remake Sherlock Holmes or Alice in Wonderland and everything like that. If something's public domain, you can reuse it. Jane Austen's been dead for quite some time now, and you can redo Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility or any of those. You can also redo Dickens. A lot of Shakespeare gets redone. So what I do is I do new stories for Darcy and Elizabeth, and it's like your favorite TV show never being canceled.
Nice. Sounds good. Well, if we go into the first question, it's why do you write? So I guess first of all, why do you write? And 2, why do you write the Jane Austen?
Oh boy. Okay. So why I write was an accident. In 2007, I was married at the time and we had just moved from Virginia to California. And I was trying to start a business to do administrative assistant work online. And there was a link that said, write articles for money. I clicked it. And if it was going to cost me any money, I wasn't going to do it. And it did not. They paid me $7 for my first article on long distance relationship tips. And before Joe Conrath, and I always get the other guy's name mixed up, but they did a big talk about be the monkey, not the frog.
Right.
This is 2010. But prior to that, for 3 years, I had been writing SEO articles and kind of like lifestyle pieces and stuff for websites and everything. So as they were talking about the new digital publishing that was coming, the indie publishing that was just in its infancy, I realized I had all those skills accidentally. Right. Like my degree is in political science. It's not in English at all. As for where I write Jane Austen stuff is it was my secret guilty pleasure. I've been reading it since the 2005 movie. And the fandom is really funny because before indie publishing really took off, we had to get our stuff from forums and from websites. It was almost like an underground culture. We would trade PDFs of our favorite books and everything. Right. And when KDP came out, that they democratized publishing, all of a sudden these stories that were so popular on forums and stuff could be published and reach a wider audience. In 2014, there was not a new Darcy book, and I was going through a tough time. I had just quit a job that sucked. And so I decided to write one, and that was The Trouble with Horses. And I put it up, and I sold over 200 copies that first week without any advertising. So I was like, okay, I can definitely do this.
Wow. And in terms of sort of publishing, obviously, as you said, you're indie published. Mm-hmm. Would that be an issue going to try to get a traditional contract, do you think, in terms of the genre that you write?
No. I've had some interest from traditional publishers that I've talked with at different conferences and things. I don't really want this on a podcast, but it's the truth. So that's just what it's going to be. I'm that indie that sells her novels for $9.99. And my novellas for $4.99. So I already sell my books actually at the trad pub price points. It is unlikely that the advances that they could offer me and what's going on with the climate right now could really make financial sense for me to not publish it myself.
Yeah.
Now there's a possibility that they have a bigger reach than I do. And I haven't ruled it out or anything like that. It's just at the moment, I haven't taken the time to put a project towards trad pub, but I've had there be interest in doing a project that way. It's just so different than what I do. So I think I would have a hard time about giving up the control aspects of it.
Yeah. Okay, well, question number 2 is how do you write? So do you plot the stories out first or just sort of run with them and see where they take you?
It's a mixture, but mostly plotting. So I love James Scott Bell, but I mean, I first learned plotting from the Snowflake Method with Randy Ingermason, who does. He also wrote Writing Fiction for Dummies. But I'm also a dictate girl. I'm the one who did the How to Train Your Dragon on the keyboard forum. So in 2015, 2014, I started dictating my stories with Dragon. So a big part is I just kind of slapdash write out ideas for the scenes. Like I have a note card right here for me that just says D and E make plans when to leave. D talks with B about Mr. Bingley, meaning Mr. Bingley, about staying at Netherfield. So I do my beats and kind of capture down on paper any like pieces of dialogue I hear or any visuals I see while I'm thinking of the scene and the sequences. And then I sit down and I put on music. So I'll put my headbuds in, and I'll usually listen to either music from the time period or like scores from movies.
Right.
And then I just dictate it into an MP3 recorder, and I plug that into my computer, and it turns it into words.
Very nice. It's a similar method to Kevin J. Anderson. He came on the self-publishing show not long ago and was talking about basically the same sort of principle, I think.
Yes. I was an early adopter of Dragon. I admin the Dragon Writers group on Facebook and everything like that. So, and I tell people, it's going to feel awkward. I've been dictating for 20-something books. It's still awkward for me. It's my first session of the day. But I get faster with each session. So,
yeah. Is there a particular time and place that you prefer doing the dictation?
I usually like to do it in the morning, but I've also been successful with like taking the recorder upstairs at night right before I'm going to bed and then getting a scene down or two. That's helpful because then in the morning when I wake up and I plug it into the computer, it's like I'm already ahead of the game to start the day. But I try not to put rules on myself, because if I put rules about when I have to do things, then I don't do them, because if I miss that rule or whatever, then I'm not somebody that can overcome that. So it's a lot easier for me if I'm just like, I can write, telling myself I can write anytime, anywhere allows me to do that, to write anytime, anywhere.
Yeah. That leads into question number 3, which is, are you a full-time author? If you are, how did you get there? And if you aren't, what steps are you taking to make it happen?
Okay, so for years I had to explain that I made full-time money working part-time, but I had the luxury of, we relied on my spouse's income at the time. He was active duty Navy, and we moved every 2 to 3 years.
Right.
So that's why I started writing the books. And it was kind of, I've always felt very fortunate about that. Now, after my divorce, I'm still a full-time writer. I had some emotional setbacks last year, so I took a part-time job that turned into a full-time job, but I just quit that last week. But the lowest my income has ever been from my books is about $1,000 in a month. That's what my royalties come in at. The best month I've ever had was $15,000.
Wow.
So I am a full-time writer. I've pretty much, it's been my full-time career since 2007, either as in a part-time capacity, because that's what my family needed me to do, or in a full-time capacity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. Well, question number 4 is, what mistakes do you think you've made and what have you got right?
Do we have an hour? Okay, so there's a line in Pride and Prejudice that Elizabeth Bennet says, only think of the past so much as it brings you joy. So the mistakes that I have made, I would say that for the most part, I found a way to correct it. Maybe not to completely erase what happened. Let's see. Probably the biggest mistakes would be people in this industry.
Right.
So I was sued once upon a time. And early on in my career, I worked for someone for free who was a complete narcissist. And she basically put me down to the point that it was like I wasn't going to write a long time. I believed her because I was in my late 20s and I had other issues. But so I think the biggest mistakes to make in this industry is like getting into business with the wrong person, because there's a lot of people in this particular industry working from home, writing books and stuff that are just not stable individuals. Right. They'll get threatening in Facebook groups and things like that, and we've had issues as an industry, I think, dealing with that. I was sued, for example, over a Facebook post. Wow. I won, but it turns out in the business world, when you get sued, even though it's not you shouldn't have been sued, you still have to pay thousands of dollars to get the lawsuit dismissed, and you can file to like get that money back. However, you can't squeeze blood from a stone. So if the other author who sued you or whatever isn't made of money, your chances of recovering that is just not likely. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So that would probably be my biggest mistakes revolve around who I got involved with. But as soon as I realized those mistakes, I walked away from those people. As far as what I think I've done really well, I am one of the most stable wide authors out there. Like when I talk in my groups and stuff and talk with colleagues, my income kind of stays pretty much the same. I make about $50,000 a year for my books. Now, part of that's me. I kind of have naturally changed how many books I was writing in a year. I've written as many as 8 in a year. I've written as little as 2 in a year to make that money. But I built systems that are mostly organic. So like I have a website that is a membership site that my readers join and get chapters, and that handles the really heavy lifting of my marketing. I spend $30 a month on Google Ads to drive traffic to my site, and that's all I spend in marketing each month. Right. And I still make 4 figures a month. So as far as what I think I did right, I built a very stable business system where my publishing is concerned.
Yeah. Okay, well, question number 5 is, what's your final piece of advice for authors starting out in indie publishing?
I would say be patient. There is kind of an undercurrent, I would say, to a lot of the different publishing groups I'm in, that if you're not immediately successful with your first book or in your first year or something, or your first 6 months or whatever, that you somehow aren't going to make it with this industry. And everything changes every 6 months. So like, for example, I can remember when we couldn't publish on Kobo. Kobo became available, I think in 2012 or 2013. So everything's changing. Give yourself a lot of grace and just keep moving in the right direction. And I would also recommend that you don't spend a lot of energy wondering if you're doing it right, because I see a lot of authors that get stuck. They're afraid that the decision they make might be the wrong one. And since I've been doing this for 9 years now with the book publishing, but 13 years for selling my writing online, make a decision and go with it, because even if it's the wrong decision, you can fix it. But I would say, if you stand in one spot, you're absolutely not going to have any results. But if you actually move in a direction, you got a 50% chance of something good happening. Yeah. And if you're going in the wrong direction, you just got to turn around and make a U-E and go the other way.
Great. That's good advice. And those are your 5 questions up. Thank you very much for coming on, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That's it for this week's Self-Publishing Spotlight. Don't forget that you can get your free self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. And if you want to appear as a guest on this show, send us brief details about yourself and your writing at selfpublishingformula.com/spotlight-guest. I'm Tom Ashford, and I'll see you again next week.